This is a lesson on the literature component for Form 4 and Form 5. So this lesson is for the poem The Living Photograph by Jackie Kay. Okay, let's look at the poem The Living Photograph by Jackie Kay. My small grandmother is tall there, straight back, white broderie English shirt, pleated skirt, flat shoes, grey bun, a kind old smile round her eyes. Her big hand holds mine, white hand in black hand. Her sharp blue eyes look at her own death in the eye. It was true after all, that look. My tall grandmother became small, her back round and hunched. Her soup forgot to boil. She went to the awful place grandmothers go, somewhere unknown, unthinkable. But there she is still, in the photo with me at 3. The crinkled smile is still living, breathing. So here is the information about Jackie Kay. Jacqueline Margaret Kay, CBE FRSE, is a Scottish poet, playwright and novelist known for her works Other Lovers, Trumpet and Red Dust Road. Kay has won a number of awards, including the Guardian Fiction Prize in 1998 and the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust Book of the Year Award in 2011. Jackie Kay was born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1961 to a Scottish mother and a Nigerian father. She was adopted by a white couple at birth and was brought up in Glasgow, studying at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama and Stirling University, where she read English. The experience of being adopted by and growing up within a white family inspired her first collection of poetry, The Adoption Papers, in 1991. The poems deal with an adopted child's search for a cultural identity and are also told through 3 different voices: an adoptive mother, a birth mother, and a daughter. The collection won a Scottish Arts Council Book Award, the Sautai Society Scottish First Book of the Year Award, and a recommendation by the Forward Poetry Prize judges in 1992. Now let's look at the form for the poem. It is a 3-stanza poem. There is no fixed rhyme scheme. The first stanza has 7 lines, the second stanza has 6, and the third stanza has 3 lines. Language. The language used is straight and simple. The language of the poem is simple and reflects the vocabulary of a child. Many single syllable descriptive words are used, for example, flat, grey, kind, round, big, tall, small. The lines are short and have a basic structure. Example, her big hand holds mine. Now let's look at the vocabulary for the poem. We have broderie Anglais shirt. It's a French word for English embroidery. The blouse is characterized by a round or oval patterned cutouts in the fabric, giving it a delicate lacy effect. So the material is normally cotton. So this is the description of the blouse. A bun is the hair is tied together into a round shape at the back of the head. So grey means it is the hair is grey or becoming white. Pleated means a skirt with fullness reduced to fit the waist by means of regular pleats or fold, and hunch will be the back bent forward. Then we have the next or full, which is dreadful or bad. Unknown means you cannot recognize it. Unrecognized, unthinkable, inconceivable means you can't even imagine how it is like. And crinkled means wrinkle. Now let's look at the meaning of each line. So this is stanza 1. My small grandmother is tall there. It means the persona's grandmother looks tall in the photograph. Straight back, white broderie Anglais shirt means she is standing with good posture because her back is straight, and then she's wearing an embroidered lace blouse, pleated skirt, flat shoes, grey bun. She wears the blouse with a pleated skirt, non-heel shoes, and her grey hair is in a bun. A kind old smile round her eyes. She is smiling kindly. Her big hand holds mine. Her big hand is holding the persona's hand. White hand in black hand. The contrast of their skin colors or complexion can clearly be seen in their linked hands, dark and fair. Her sharp blue eyes look at her own death in the eye. Her grandmother's sharp blue eyes suggest that she is not afraid of dying. Now for stanza 2, the first line, it was true after all that look. So this means the persona's reference of death came true. My tall grandmother became small. The grandmother became thinner and more fragile or weak. Her back round and hunched. Her back became hunched or bent forward because her backbone or spine curved due to weakened bones. Her soup forgot to boil. It means that she became forgetful or senile. She went to the awful place grandmother's go. Soon she passed away. Somewhere unknown, unthinkable. Upon her death, she went to a place that no one knows. For stanza 3, but there she is still. However, in the photograph, her grandmother will always be alive. In the photo with me at 3, the persona was there. In the photograph, she was 3 years old and she was with her grandmother. The crinkled smile is still living, breathing. Her grandmother's smile, with wrinkles around her mouth, is still so alive and real. Now, let's look at the setting. We have place. So normally, because of the poem of the poet herself, so maybe it is in Britain, possibly Scotland, where the poet grew up. In the photograph, the grandmother is wearing a white broderie Anglais shirt, which is popular in Scotland. The persona is most likely in his or her home, as the poem reveals the thoughts of the child who is looking at a photograph of the grandparent or the grandmother. Time, it must be in the 20th century, because the photograph is in color, and color photography was expensive and not very common up until the 1960s. So point of view, it is a first person point of view because of the word I or my or mine. For example, my small grandmother is tall there. Her big hand holds mine. So point of view will be first person point of view. Okay, let's look at the tone. The general tone of the poem is nostalgic as the grandchild looks at a photograph of her grandmother and recalls the past when the grandmother was alive. The second verse has a serious tone with an underlying feeling of fear as the child remembers the grandmother growing old and weak and finally dying. And in the last stanza, the poem ends on a positive note, because the persona is comforted by the picture of the grandmother, which keeps her memory of her grandmother alive. Okay, let's look at the moral values. First one, when you write moral values, remember that you must use phrases such as we should or we must. Okay, you can even write we ought to, okay? So we must treasure our loved ones when they are alive. We must spend as much time as we can with our loved ones while they are still living. We must never forget the importance of family relationship. We should not forget to love and care for our family, especially our grandparents, who are the pillars of a family. Moving on to themes. There are several themes. Number 1, the everlasting quality of a photograph. A photograph immortalizes a person or a moment. What is captured in a photograph will remain alive forever. In the poem, the persona's grandmother has already passed away. However, in the photograph, she will always be healthy and alive. A photograph also allows us to reflect on what happened in the past and relive our memories. Second tip is death. Okay, it is a bit similar with number 3, life and death. So death is a defined outcome for all of us. In the poem, the persona recalls how her grandmother was once strong and healthy, but soon grew older and became senile and fragile. In the end, the grandmother passed away and the persona is only able to relive her memories with her grandmother through a photograph. Theme number 3, life and death. The poem is also about life and death from the point of view of the aged and also the very young. The grandmother knew that she would die soon, but she was unafraid. It also gives us the impression that grandmother would fight to stay alive for as long as possible. For the young persona, death is a fearful thing. She or he understands that death is a place old people like grandmothers go. Death is unavoidable. Death is described as an awful place, somewhere unknown, unthinkable. That is why the persona is happy that he or she has a photograph of the beloved grandmother where the grandmother lives on. The photograph defeats death. That is the significance of the title of this poem, The Living Photograph. For theme number 4, remembering a loved one. In this poem, the persona described the grandmother as pictured in a photograph taken when he or she was 3 years old. The persona described how the grandmother looks in detail, the clothes she wears, the way she ties her hair up in a bun, and her kind smiling eyes. Then the persona recalls the changes in the grandmother's appearance and behavior as she grew older, how her back became bent and how she became forgetful. From the photograph, the persona goes to his or her memory of the grandparent. The grandmother is dead now, but she still looks alive in the photograph. And the last theme, family relationships. The poem focuses on the relationship between a grandchild and his or her grandparent. The photograph of the two reveals the bond between them. Grandmother is holding the child's hand in hers. Even though the grandparent and the child seem to be of different ethnicity, as their skin color is different, they love each other. Even though grandmother changed into a bent-over, forgetful old woman, the child still remembers the grandmother as she looks in the photograph. Now the most important is we are at the questions and answers. So A, how old was the poet when the photograph was taken? Answer is 3 years old. B, the grandmother had become senile. How do you know this? Answer, her soup forgot to boil, or she had forgotten to boil her soup. C, how does the poet want to remember her grandmother? Smiling, living, or breathing? So you can write any one of these answers. Last D, the poet shows how she loves and appreciates her grandmother in the poem. Give 2 other ways how you can show your love and appreciation towards your family members. So possible answers are, we can celebrate their birthdays together, we can go for a picnic together, we can cook their favorite dishes, and we can buy them presents. Next set of questions. A, to whom do you think the title of the poem relates to? So answer will be the persona's grandmother. B, what happened to her grandmother's physical appearance as she aged? She became small and short because her back became round and hunched. How does the persona describe the other world? How does this reflect the persona's perception of life after death? So it is described as an awful, unknown, and unthinkable. I think she feels the other world is a terrible unknown place and she cannot understand the living condition there. Who are in the photograph? So the answer, the persona and her grandmother. Next, A. In stanza 1, which words mean open embroidery on white linen? So the answer will be broderie anglaise. B. Describe the grandmother's skirt and shoes. The skirt is pleated and the shoes are flat. Where was the persona when the grandmother passed away? Provide a reason for your answer. She was by her grandmother's side. The reason is because of the line her big hand holds mine. Give one moral value that can be learnt from this poem. We must treasure our loved ones when they are alive. So remember, for moral value, we must write we must or we should and so on. Next set of questions. A. What does the photograph represent? The photograph represents the memories the persona has of her late grandmother. How old was the persona when the photograph was taken? 3 years old. Which line in the poem tells us the grandmother has become forgetful? So the answer is her soup forgot to boil. So remember, when the question asks you which line, you have to answer by writing the line. D. Why do you think the writer's small grandmother is tall in the photograph? I think it is because most probably the photo was taken when the writer's grandmother was younger. Which line tells you that the writer and her grandmother are from different ethnic background? So the line is white hand in black hand. Next, A. To whom the title of the poem relates to? So the answer is the grandmother. B. Why do you think the grandmother forgot to boil the soup? Answer, she is getting older or she is getting forgetful. C. How old was the poet when the photograph was taken? So answer is 3. D. Give 2 suggestions on how you can show your love and appreciation towards your grandmother. So the answer, the question wants 2 suggestions. So number 1 is respect them. Number 2, love them unconditionally. You can write other answers which are logical. So next, from stanza 1, which line shows that the grandmother is a pleasant person? So the answer will be a kind old smile round her eyes. From stanza 2, list 2 things of what the persona remembers of her grandmother. So you can write any answer. For example, the grandmother was small, had round back or hunched back, and was forgetful or senile, or the grandmother had died. Okay, how can we treasure our memories with our loved ones? Give 2 ways. So the answer is, we can spend time with them doing various activities. We can take photographs together. We can celebrate their birthdays. Okay, these questions are from the 2019 trial papers. So in stanza 1, describe what the grandmother was wearing. So the answer, white broderie, anglaise shirt, pleated skirt and flat shoes. In stanza 2, what was happening to the grandmother? So the answer will be, the grandmother was declining physically. It means that she was becoming worse, where her memory started to get worse and she was forgetting things, or she became forgetful. In the poem, whose crinkled smile was the persona referring to? So the answer, her grandmother or grandmother. D. Would you send your old grandmother to live in an old folks home? Explain the reason for your action. So the answer should be no. I think old people need to be surrounded by their loved ones. If not, they could deteriorate mentally. Or you can write other reasonable answer. In stanza 1, how do we know that the grandmother was loving towards the persona? Answer, she holds or held the persona's hand and she smiled. Or she smiled. In stanza 2, her soup forgot to boil. What does this show about the grandmother? She was forgetful or she was senile. Which phrase represents unpleasant condition? The answer will be, the question asks for a phrase. So a phrase means it must be more than one word. So the answer will be awful place. You can write awful place grandmother's go. Okay, next. What is the emotion felt by the persona in stanza 3? Why do you think so? So the answer should be, she misses her grandmother, she loves her grandmother dearly, she feels her grandmother's affection or warmth. So your reason will be because the persona, or she keeps a picture of them together, or she wants to remember her grandmother as she is in the picture, smiling and healthy, or she reminisces her childhood memory with her grandmother. Next, from stanza 1, what can you tell about the grandmother from the way she dresses? So the answer, she's a neat person, she's a tidy person, she's a simple person, or she's an elegant or feminine lady. Okay, my tall grandmother became small. Why do you think the grandmother became small? So the answer, she became old, she is hunched due to old age, she was dying, she was sick. Next, see, from stanza 3, why do you think the poet said the smile is still living? So the answer, because the persona could still reminisce the memories together with her or his grandmother. Or you can say she could still remember her grandmother vividly or clearly. Okay, number D, if your grandmother is still alive but bedridden, how would you care for her welfare? Give reason for your answer. Action will be, I will care for her well-being, feed her, bath her, cook for her. And the reason will be, she cannot move for herself, or she cannot manage herself. Okay, next in stanza 1, state one word which gives a meaning of having narrow folds of cloth. Answer will be pleated. In stanza 2, which line shows that grandmother is no longer able to stand upright? So answer, a back, round and hunch. What can you infer from the line, she went to the awful place grandmother's go? So the answer, the persona's grandmother has passed away. See, how do we cherish the memory of our loved ones who have passed away? Suggest 2 ways to do so. So you can write any logical answer. For example, how do you cherish memory? You can say that by keeping their photograph, or you can say you can cherish that loved one by keeping things that belong to them. Or maybe you can say you will hold a celebration or prayers on the day of their death. Okay, next. Which line tells you that the persona and her grandmother are from different ethnic backgrounds? So answer, white hand in black hand, which is in line 6. Please remember, you cannot write line 6, you're supposed to write the line itself. Okay, which word in stanza 2 states that the grandmother's back is bent? So answer will be a word only. So the answer is hunch. How do you know that the grandmother has become senile? Answer, the grandmother was being forgetful as her soup forgot to boil, or she forgot to boil her soup. Okay, the crinkled smile is still living, breathing. The line tells us that the persona loves her grandmother. Some children send their grandparents to nursing homes as they get older. What do you think of their action? Give reasons to support your answer. So, you can write any possible reason. What do you think of the action? So you say, you can write, these children are doing the wrong thing because they should learn to appreciate their grandparents by keeping their grandparent close to them. Okay, then you can write number 2. The action is wrong because we should appreciate what our grandparents have done for us, and then you can do so by making sure that they have a comfortable life with us. Next, in stanza 1, write down the phrase that shows the difference between the grandmother and the persona. So it is a phrase. So answer should be white hen in black hen. In stanza 2, what happened to the persona's grandmother? Answer, she died or she passed away. In stanza 3, the persona remembers her grandmother very fondly. Which line shows this reminiscing? So the answer will be, the question is for a line. So answer will be, the crinkled smile is still living, breathing. D, what would you do for your grandmother? Give the reason to support your answer. Okay, so action and reason. So what will you do? Answer will be, I will take care of her, or I will stay with her. Any possible answer you can write. Then the reason will be, because I love my grandmother, or she took care of me. Any plausible answer. Thank you. That's the end of the video on the poem, The Living Photograph. Bye.